to be reality. But there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
Here are your two hands. During the war, they worked very hard. And now they're tired. And they're tired of this, too. Shortages still. To put an end to them, we must produce the goods. Steady production now will buy our imports of food and raw materials and fill the shops again with the things we all want. Output will do it.
Something I thought I would add. If you closely examine the structure of this video, the aspects of the issues covered answer perspectives I have come to question here recently. As I have said before, I do not read the Bible as I am not welcome in God's house or his objects that are blessed. They bring me discomfort. Just holding the Bible when I did read it some 20 years ago left my fingertips feeling as though it was fresh skin that had just healed over a burned wound, soft and not coarse or rough like most skin. These perspectives were handed down to me by a mix of hosts, some of heaven, some of spirit, some were conclusions I came to myself, but none of this was done falsely or with false intent. Another perspective I wish to add, that this Lucifer angelic being may be the deceptions of my doppelganger Samael. Either way, if it is my angelic aspect that is behind this, then he should not work against himself. Then again, maybe that is why I'm being led to this understanding. On one side of the coin he could see me as the aspect of his fall from heaven, for I can contradict every angle he displays, sift through his lies and see through his illusions. On another point I could be seen as his replacement in heaven, for my virtue is more profound than his, my faith in God is stronger than his, yet I still possess the anger and contempt that can overwhelm me towards the desire for vengeance, and I am perfect in all my ways that pertain to him and his persona, just as he. So I could be seen as the living judgment of God, casting him down and his place no longer being found in heaven because he's been replaced, with me. A legend being replaced by a living testimony, but no, these answers only lead to more questions, so they cannot be the right path. Now this is a Chinese finger trap we have gotten ourselves into. Now on to the project. God. What aspects of creation can we notice an artist's mark to be evident in? Well, we have humanity and the qualities about us that he specifically designed for us and no other species, especially the contradictive ones, such as sex, free will, disobedience, shame, vanity, disloyalty, murder, idolatry, opulence, tyrannical control issues. We'll start with those. Now what I am doing is taking and extracting the personality traits from within God's design so we can piece together characteristics of an identity. First we have his antisocial commands that hide his identity from the information provided. It is based on protecting creation from falling victim to being controlled by third-party forces. We also see that this trait most likely came from experiences in the past, such as the rebellion for example, so it is a learned reaction, not a personality trait. Moving on then, next is the sin of man we are all supposedly born guilty of, and that is sex. To God, sex is a sin of opulence and a serious double standard. Sex is necessary for mankind to continue his existence. Technically there is no exception to God when it comes to sex, whether by married couples or casual encounters, it's all a sin by his standards, and we each are considered born guilty of sin instantly by the act our parents performed to bring us into the world. This is a major personality marker that shows signs of either a community-based social ethic or childhood-instilled behavioral pattern placed as a reflex-like trait. Next we have the human condition of free will. Another major double standard of our design that goes back to mankind's first sin, which many believe was disobedience, but that is where the double standard takes place, for if free will was a gift from God and was his intention to bestow man with this quality, then eating the fruit from the tree was not mankind's first sin, lying was, and it was done out of fear and shame. For if you notice, God did not get angry with Adam and Eve until he asked them why they were covering themselves in shame and if they had eaten the fruit, to which they lied to him and said no. That is when he burst out in anger and said he knew they had, because we wouldn't be covering ourselves unless we had. So if the gift of free will was intended by his design all along, then everything that happened in the garden was by his design except when they choose to lie to him. Through this we see that it was most likely mankind who was responsible for this confusion out of spite for the hardships they have had to endure since we were exiled from the garden. Even that, however, was both necessary and intentional, as mankind had to leave the garden in order to begin the process of learned skills through evolution. However, through this event I see the parental tough love approach, but behind that I also see a creator who privately detests his own creations because he has embedded the qualities that he himself is not capable of experiencing and made them within his own creations that logically to him would be seen as to enjoy what he could not, and that is where the resentment begins. Watching us enjoy the free will to choose our lives' courses while he is bound by his entitlement of being God, where we can enjoy the satisfactions of sin without the born wisdom to know their repercussions, while he must remain an image of perfection, never enjoying such things, and many other qualities of the human condition that comes with emotions and self-awareness, is the reasons of why he is so quick to anger with us, and is what led to his designing the divine virtues of his will. Or did he? Maybe the church and priests designed these virtues, and God, knowing this, designed the 10 Commandments first in the fashion that he did. If anyone has looked at them from a third-person perspective, they are plain and to the point. They do not contradict each other. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt honor thy mother and father, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt worship no other God before me, thou shalt not worship engraven idols, thou shalt honor thy neighbor, thou shalt not blaspheme the name of God, thou shalt not speak false lies, thou shalt hold no conviction against another nor trespass against one another, thou shalt not profane your own body, thou shalt not bear thy neighbor's shame before others, Thou shalt not cast thy unborn seed to the waters, thou shalt honor your fathers' fathers who came before them, thou shalt not covet any earthly things. These are the commandments of God, and as you can see they do not contradict each other as the divine virtues do, but then again I guess that is the missed meaning that divides them. The commandments are explicit do nots handed down by God to man through his prophets. The divine virtues and deadly sins are details of certain actions that can either redeem a person or condemn them, and were discerned by men of faith that sought to understand his will towards man to live by, and it seems the virtues of God's will contradict the very foundation of mankind's free will. Sometimes it seems to bar the very ability of free will itself. I think in my opinion that mankind, no matter how pious, is still man and incapable of comprehending God's nature, thus should not dictate to the masses what they interpret as God's will for man. That unless they have gone through an experience like Enoch, Moses, Daniel, Elijah or any of the other prophets had, where God intentionally brought them out of body in spirit and made them capable of hearing and understanding his will by making them an angel or vessel of his spirit, then they should not try to dictate his will as such. I sense that the Jewish were right in this aspect, that these things should be handed down by angels as they are sinless in nature and are each connected to his will, otherwise it runs the risk of being misinterpreted or mimicked even if it is for the greater good. For example, because of the misinterpretation of sex as a sin, mankind is forever naturally born of sin, which is why they say Jesus came born of the Immaculate Conception and redemption to absolve us of the carnal sin, and envelopes the purpose behind his title of being he who is without sin, but still it is dodging the underlying issue of man being born with the lesser than perfect image, unlike himself, and bound not to be successful in any outcome from our lives. Take all this and piecing it together, we see an antisocial setting of lifelong suppression due to being considered a social outcast by most he has encountered, but this trait is not something that anyone has ever challenged, because he still sees himself as the icon of perfection and it is everyone else around him that is wrong, but he stayed silent about this opinion, otherwise he would not see himself as perfect. Which I am beginning to see that this image the church has been promoting, the one who has been made God in our religion's history, from Noah's tale, the war of Israel and the Canaanites and the Levites with the ark, all the way to present-day religious encounters and doctrine, is actually none other than my angelic self, the fallen one, Lucifer himself. Even down to the glaring face of light that none may look upon bears the quality of the light-bearer, not God. The benevolent creator and loving fatherly figure I remember from the garden I was shown in my comatose vision. Maybe that was why I was shown these things, to see and know his presence from the one who would try to even deceive an aspect of himself. And as it is said that Jesus mentioned, if Satan is set against himself then his kingdom is divided, and how can a kingdom divided last for eternity? Another aspect to point out is the severe difference between the Garden of Eden in chapters 1-5 and the quick to lash out harsh judgment of chapters 6-14 that covers the flood of Noah's tale. Here in this change we see that he has lost his patience and benevolence and has taken the form of a malevolent being without regard to collateral damage nor mercy, as he places his decree upon the children of the Nephilim as abominations, holding convictions against the innocent without remorse, and his decision to flood the earth and basically start from scratch because they all had turned from acknowledging him or even listening to him, as they had placed the heroes, the Nephilim children, who used their powers to help and save mankind many times, and so they were donned the title of men of legend and men of renown, even though he had sent them to perform these tasks that led them to be heroes in the first place. If they were seen as heroes, then that means they were doing their job he had sent them there to do in the first place. This shows signs of emotional detachment, immediate sense of jealousy and a subconscious retaliation against his own angels for being heroes and doing exactly what he sent them there to do in the first place. More importantly, I see two different gods. The creator from the Garden of Eden, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is not the same God by chapter 6 and Noah's flood. All the qualities and skills portrayed in the beginning of Genesis are traits and skills that only one could possess if they were highly skilled in self-control and of sound mind. The qualities portrayed from chapter 6 on are qualities of the exact opposite, and not one who was or had ever at any point been an individual possessing the self-control of the Creator. So with that perspective in place, we come to the question of what happened to him then, and who is the God that has been deceiving us, as far as we are able to resort to recorded evidence to tell us this. I surmise, considering how it abruptly stops in recorded structure and totally changes between chapter 5 to 6, that the first 5 chapters were transcribed from a recorded tablet that portrayed the Creator and creation's origin, since it's so short, and even this tablet was an abridged version of what transpired. But after chapter 5 something I think happened to the ones transcribing the tablet which would account for the change in character. And whoever did transcribe the rest of this had deep resentments towards God, which is obvious by their displayed explanation of his character and how things occurred. The first 5 chapters display a character that was experienced, controlled and seemingly almost automated in his actions and responses, but he also displayed the benevolence and love of a parent that he kept well concealed, not allowing it to interfere with his decisions and actions. I would suggest the Catholics should try asking their patron guardians that show not only their aspects of being fallen angels but also to be possessing some innate power and authority that has been divided between them, that suggests they are holding the property last known to be that of God's position. So if anyone would know the answer to these questions, would be them. So let us ask the Lucifer they depicted to cover their crimes, that I'm sensing I have been selected to bear the title for that guilt to be paid and absolve them of their sin, just as they had convinced Christ to do for the benefit of mankind. One last point I should add is a reminder that it says that God had sentenced the other fallen angels to walk the earth without corporeal bodies until the end of the earth, and even then they must sit outside the gates of heaven until judgment day, making it very likely that this is who has revealed themselves to the church this entire time.
Outlaw immortals, bow down to something greater than yourself, Trick. Individually capable of enormous amounts of chin checks and oswalds. They ain't knowing. You watching but you ain't seeing what lies before you, biatch. Picture, if you will, 7 deadly human beings blessed with the gift of speech, the power to reach each nigga on every street. May the Heavenly Father look down and be proud of what transpired since the day the seed was planted. The G grew, but we knew we have a click. Smoked out, loped out, all in the shit. It's me and my dogs living like hogs. Outlaw immortals. What followed was the story. What preceded was the clue. Lives taken with fiction. Don't fuck around and make it true.
My adversaries crumble when we rumble. It's a catastrophe. Out for revenge on bitch niggas that blasted me. Plus my alias is Machiavelli. A loaded 357 with hollow points to a nigga belly. Bust him and see if he bleed. He should've never fucked around with a sick ass nigga like me. They call my name out, niggas run. Let's be prepared for the outlaws. Here we come.
They call me Hussein Fatal. It's a 2-game table. I'm robbing your niggas' cradle with a knife in your navel. Rap-related, criminally activated and evil. I wouldn't wanna be behind my fucking Desert Eagle to the end. I'm telling all friends and enemies. You see what I got to make you freeze? To touch me, you need titties. Complete most. Wanted on the streets of the East Coast. Young guns fight and niggas bleed.
I be shining like white diamonds and crystals, glistening, holding pistols. The mission simple, roller for rollers, that presidential, so all of potential. $1 ball of potential, sorta. All the call on the nigga, I be sure to get you. K Castro, fast yo, for my Castro blast, and I'm a last yo, pass all these class Joes and assholes who claim like they be running things. I be gunning those same niggas running late.
My enemies motherfucking up, Napoleon, and I'd rather be robbing again before these motherfuckers see me suffering, but it ain't nothing. And I got no top and no bluffing. Before a nigga finish with putting in work, I better end up with something. I think these niggas got the game fucked up. If they don't believe that a young nigga like me will bust, perhaps it's a must. I'm facing cases, fuck probation is what I'm speaking when these money hungry cops be chasing.
Thug nigga till we die, no mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why, will we ride? Thug nigga till we die, no mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why, will we ride?
It's the Imperial serial killer, alias Mussolini, mentally unstable G status, so you can't see me. Drug warlord, riding Concord jets, rag vests, shaking bitches and snitches and dripping on sets. Eagle wise banger, keeping one in the chamber for the anger that I build inside. When it's time to ride, suicidal thoughts lurking, perking no end to revenge. Fuck any, my alias Mussolini.
They call me Edie.
Young nigga greedy, so I'm running up on these niggas easy. It ain't nothing, cause what they want is something. So I'ma commence to dump and stomp down and stuck up while my beat is bumping. Thuggin' till my fucking last up. With Lil Pole and Castro, who you thought was on that ass, so don't ask up. Outlaw immortals doing this dinner on the spot, so ain't no chance to hide when we ride.
My alien's Gaddafi, Trump tight so fast can't copy. 6'3" and cocky, quick to hit your bitch if she chop me. Severely addicted to living like a fucking felon. My beefing with rookie cops, the cookie rocks a nigga selling. Since a shorty I've been living like Defiant. Nickel plated chrome, got this baby Capone looking like a giant. And I ain't lying, it's like it's me against myself. With all these backstabbing snakes grabbing at my fucking well.
Many called terrorist, madman, killer. The bottom of the river where somebody lays and shivers. I'm back, nigga, with the 50 cal caps, with the murderous stack. Let it creep while these motherfuckers eat beef. It's been a long road, a lot of episodes, and as the clock loads, I gotta teach hoes, reach hoes, make a feeling nigga when I'm mashing out, surpassing any assassin.
Thug nigga till we die. No mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why. Do we ride? Thug niggas till we die. No mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why. Do we ride? Thug niggas till we die. No mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why. Do we ride? Thug niggas till we die. No mercy on these player hating bitches. Ask me why. Do we ride? Outlaw immortals, baby. Y'all niggas can't fade this so crazy. Machiavelli, Hussein, Castro, Gaddafi, Mussolini, Amin, Napoleon, Khomeini. What y'all really want to do? Like them niggas say, what would you do?